Welcome to a brand new series, Vantage Point, first of its kind investment talk show in Sri Lanka.
Every other Sunday on Radio Sri Lanka from 10 to 11 a.m.
A review of global and local economic situation, capital markets and selected stocks.
Speakers, Securities Exchange Commission Acting Director General Professor Harindra Disa Bandara and Chamikara Gunawardana, Founder Investor I Private Limited.
Sponsored by Investor I Private Limited. If you are looking for investing through research, don't miss your Vantage Point.
Every other Sunday on Radio Sri Lanka from 10 to 11 a.m.
Right here on Radio Sri Lanka.
Good morning, listeners.
Vantage Point.
Vantage Point. Intelligent investing through research. Sri Lanka's first of its kind investment talk show. Welcome to the brand new program. Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, as Sri Lanka's pioneer station, Radio Sri Lanka proudly presents
Vantage Point.
Every other Sunday starting from Sunday the 10th of February. So we have the pleasure of introducing you as our chief guests, two guests as the very first program this morning. That is Mr. Chamikara Gunawardana, Founder Investor I Private Limited. Good morning to you, Mr. Chamikara.
Good morning.
And of course we have
Professor
Harindra Disa Bandara, Director General of SEC, Security and Exchange Commission. Good morning.
Professor.
Good morning.
Well, it's a very interesting subject. It's a timely program that educates our listeners as far as the capital market and the stock markets are concerned in Sri Lanka. So, as the very first program invitees, let's proceed with the thing that is very useful for our listeners. So, let's start asking this question from Mr. Chamikara Gunawardana. Mr. Chamikara, can you kindly just brief about capital market as a way to diversify and optimize return on savings and investment? So when I just mentioned this comes with lots and lots of complicated themes. So if you just briefly interpreting that, capital market as a way to diversify and optimize return on savings and investment.
Yes, Victor. If you look at period of the last 30 years until 2009, Sri Lanka was plagued with a number of issues. To name a few, our economy was underperforming, there was political uncertainty, and there was social disharmony. Even the educated investors were hesitant to invest in Sri Lanka's capital market, and they didn't have enough confidence also due to the uncertainties that prevailed in the country. If you look at the capital market penetration in the country, it is less than 5%. So less than 1 million population has invested in Sri Lanka's stock market. Whether you have invested in the stock exchange previously or currently investing or even contemplating in investing, until the war ended, investors had only few options. They had banks to save their money, they had treasury bills, and they also had fixed deposit options to put their money into. But with the end of war in 2009, many investment opportunities have been opened up for all Sri Lankans. So as the founder of the pioneering investment research firm in Sri Lanka, I believe it is the right time to get into Sri Lanka's stock market.
Mr. Chamikara, just a little interruption. So the comparison you made during the war period and the post-war period, so this is where that we are focusing on very much, and we find we identify the drastic changes. And you mentioned it was specifically as a founder of Investor I Private Limited. So this is a timely one. So indeed, do you find any, like you all, do you have any other Investor I Private Limited type of activities performing pure people in Sri Lanka, or you are the only sole?
Well, at the moment, we are the only independent investment research provider. I think there are a number of reasons why there were no independent research providers in the country. As I said previously, due to the uncertainties prevailed during war period, there were hardly any major foreign investors in the country. People did not have confidence to invest. So the need for independent investment research was not there during a period of uncertainty. Now it has come to surface. So that is why we have established our organization.
Well, Mr. Chamikara, now that is pretty clear. And my next point is, now as far as your research are concerned, and who are chiefly benefited out of this, like stock market investors or stock brokers, or what kind of categories that they are much benefited out of your research activities?
Well, we are looking at a very broad segment of the market. Anybody with an interest in Sri Lanka's economy and investment could benefit from our services. To name a few, any businessmen, professionals, academics, housewives, even students for that matter. Students may not invest, but subscribing to our research, they will get up-to-date, analytical and insightful information and research on global and Sri Lankan capital market, global and Sri Lankan economy, and the geopolitical situation.
Exactly, that is fine. And let's revert back to the point where I deviated from your narration. Like you have been explaining the comparison, that is post-war situation and the previous war situation. That is the point where I interrupted you for these two questions.
Yeah.
So let's proceed on that. The topic is here, diversify and optimize return on savings and investment. When we say that, how do you elaborate on that?
Well, as I said, until the end of war in 2009, people had confidence in saving their money in banks. Now, with the capital market opening up and with the confidence building up among investors, and with the government taking many positive measures to develop the capital market in Sri Lanka, any general public who want to, it doesn't matter whether in what category of income you are in, he or she could decide to put aside a percentage of their savings and income. Of course, depending on the personal circumstances such as the monthly income level, the savings they have made, the assets, the number of dependents, and the liquidity level that they require, they could, for example, one person may put aside 50% of their savings to invest in stock market, whereas another person may just put 5% of their savings. They just, of course, the way to get basic information, basic knowledge about investing in stock market, you can definitely approach the broking firms. Just that you need to open an account, and then broker firms, as the intermediary of the capital market in Sri Lanka, they will advise on how to proceed with investing in Sri Lanka stock market.
Okay, pretty well. That is so clear. And Mr. Chamikara Gunawardana, let me ask the second.
Can I disturb?
Yes.
As a prudent investor, no one should invest all their money in one asset class. They should diversify. So having percentage in savings and another percentage in treasury bills, another percentage in FDs, and another percentage in stock market.
That is basically the risk factor, I believe.
To diversify the risk.
Diversify the risk.
And even if someone invests in stock market, again, there has to be a portfolio of stocks. It is not just one stock that the person should invest in. That again, to diversify the risk. And there is the golden rule that you should not put all eggs in one basket.
So, Mr. Chamikara Gunawardana, let's proceed to the next question indeed. Who are the key stakeholders? Like these stakeholders of a capital market. That is, if you're talking about these stakeholders.
If you consider all the key stakeholders in a capital market, in a proper capital market, number one is the regulator. In Sri Lanka, it is Securities and Exchange Commission. And then the exchange itself. In Sri Lanka, it is the Colombo Stock Exchange. And the members of the stock exchange, who are the stockbroking firms. And there are unit trust companies, credit rating agencies, independent investment research firms, listed firms, and investors themselves. So some investors may have grouped and formed associations. Those are the main key stakeholders in a proper capital market.
So when you just elaborate on that, indeed that signifies and that indicates the stakeholders, they have in large numbers, they are contributing towards this activity, to bring about this activity, especially brokers, then stock investors plus CSE and stock exchange entities like that. So, and what I feel is, before your presence, their stockbrokers are concerned, were they doing that part in an indirect way towards the stock investors?
Well, there is a role that the stockbroker play in terms of advising the clients. So what they provide is investment advice. whereas what we provide is investment research. But ideally, any investment advice should be backed by proper research. So some of these broker firms do have research teams, but not all the firms have proper research teams.
Well, that's very interesting. And Mr. Chamikara Gunawardhan, let's move on to the next question. What is investment research?
Yeah, this is an interesting point. In Sri Lanka, if you look at the gamut of investors, we have active around 50,000 investors, and altogether less than 1 million has invested in Sri Lanka stock market. Maybe less than 1% has received investment research. Of the total, say 1 million, less than 10,000 people, investors may have received investment research in this country. So if you have to define investment research, of course, we have to distinguish between what is investment advice and what is investment research. Investment research is the provision of properly analyzed, processed information through an investment strategy on a financial instrument or issuers of financial instruments. So that is given to a large number of people, this general public, or clients of stockbroker firms or clients of the research firm. Whereas investment advice is more personal recommendation. Depending on the person's circumstances, the broker advises on a transaction, whether to buy, sell, or hold.
That is what I understand is as far as those entities are personalized very much. So they might be interested in promoting their own brand images as far as the stock brokers are concerned. So there can be a kind of a competition among them as well.
Absolutely. There is severe competition. There are close to 30 stockbroking companies in Sri Lanka. The way they differentiate them, the way they try to differentiate themselves is basically saying we have good research team.
Exactly. That is one key point that they can invest on as far as the propaganda aspect is concerned of their promotional activities.
Absolutely. That is the only way they could differentiate themselves. Because without proper research, you cannot give proper advice. So any savvy, any intelligent investor knows that.
Fine, Mr. Chamikara Gunawardhan. And let's move on to the next question. What is independent investment research and its emergence globally?
If you look at the investment research per se, any investment research which is not independent is absolutely valueless. Globally, the emergence of there have been number of independent investment research firms for the last few decades. But as an industry, it only started emerging since the dot-com bubble, which started in 1997 and which collapsed in 2000. During that period, the regulators realized the importance and the significance of independent investment research and also the role they could play in informing and educating the investors about the dangers and the developments in the economy and in the capital market itself.
Well, Mr. Chamikara, and I have another question really indeed that comes to my mind now. You are the pioneer Investor I Private Limited as far as researchers are concerned in this particular arena. So how do you manage to move this idea? I mean, to get the first-hand experience. Like, did you do any kind of comparison or study about the research firms that is in existence in our continent or any other places in globally?
Well, yes, absolutely. I started my career as a research analyst and ended as a head of outsourcing research project in Australia. And it is similar work that I did there, and I'm trying to basically replicate same here. I worked for the largest independent research firm called AG's Equity Research. So that is how I got the idea and how I got all the knowledge, the insights, the methods. So I'm basically trying to replicate, not the same, but try to customize to Sri Lanka.
That is something very unique to Sri Lanka.
That's
in
right.
a way that we can promote here.
Yes.
Fantastic idea, and that's a very good opportunity that I believe that you got in your life and you are here extending that expertise, knowledge towards the country's development as far as investment is concerned. Well, for the time being, let's say a big thanks to Chamikara Gunawardena for the time being.
Professor
Harendra Disa Bandara, who is Director General of the SEC, Security and Exchange Commission. Professor, the first question. Security and Exchange Commission is concerned. Only certain of us will aware about this particular organization. Can you just briefly elaborate for our listeners what is SEC?
SEC is the nation's, the very outset I can say, the nation's capital market regulator. So as Shamikara mentioned, so there are a lot of stakeholders in a capital market. We are the regulator to the capital market of Sri Lanka, and this is formulated by an Act of Parliament, number 36 of 1987, 25 years ago. So we have, in the Act, we have 4 objectives to be achieved. So having these 4 objectives in our mind, we regulate the Sri Lankan capital market.
It's all about SEC. So what I feel is it has a great history. And when you look back your history and the achievements so far, and we, of course, as Shamikara mentioned, we have this post-war era plus pre-war era. And taking all this into consideration, what kind of achievements as SEC you have made in Sri Lanka?
Yeah. Now, actually not like any organization which is manufacturing something. You can, quantify and you can see. But in the capital market, the regulator's job, it's a kind of watchdog. So at the end, what we can say is, we have regulated. So to answer your question in brief, so as I said, we have 4 objectives. Ultimately, we must maintain a fair and orderly market. So towards this, we have contributed a lot. Market means there can be situations which the market participants may very active. Because of this, there will be a lot of issues in the market. Sometimes they are not so active. So in such a situation, so we have to maintain a balance, and we have to have a fair and orderly market, so that we must bring some of the important regulations to the market, and sometimes we have to relax those things. We have to have foreign investors as well. For them to invest in our market, definitely we must maintain such global standards, otherwise they will not come to this market considering the level or the standards maintained in our market. So therefore our job is not just regulating a market. So we have to have a lot of things in our mind. At the same time, I must say, I said the orderly and fair market to be there. For that, we need to have a market development angle as well, because the existing market can be maintained. But for the future generation, we must create new products, new things, new ways, new infrastructure, ultimately market development. For that, I think we have, in the recent past, about 1 to 2 months' time, we have developed 10 key projects to develop the Sri Lankan capital market.
Why independent investment research is important to Sri Lanka?
This is not a new concept in the world. So in other parts of the world, we heard this, and we can see the benefits of this. And he worked for such an organization. So in most of the other countries, other markets, it played a very big role. But in Sri Lanka, we don't see until very recently. There's a thing called independent research, investment research. So I think with the developments in the post-war era of the Sri Lankan setup, I think we need independent investment research. Now this word independent means not a party to the transaction, not a party to the sell or buy side. That means you have no say about your recommendation. You independently, without any bias, without any prejudice, you are going to say whether this investment is worthwhile or whether this investment is viable. Now, when you are a party, so if you can remember some of the things he explained, when a party to the transaction, sell side or buy side, when you say something, there's a biasness. Then again, the investor might think about whether this research is objective one, whether this will help to make my informed decision. So, in any investment process, ultimately you have to make the decision. That decision must be backed by an informed process of thinking, so that you need research. Now, if the research is independent, the acceptance level is very, very high. Or else, what is going to happen is when you are a party to the transaction, then you will provide something. It is more towards marketing, right? Or you will just say you buy this product. Sometimes you will not cover the entire pros and cons. So in an independent research, what is going to happen is the independent researcher or the research firm has to look into all the negative sides, all the positive sides, and consider the final decision based on the real research. So I must say, independent research must provide real research background. And sometimes you will be misled. When I say only about, the buy side and sell side, then that means that trading support, trading recommendation, buy, sell or hold. But if I go beyond that, right, when it comes to IPOs, initial public offerings, this initial public offering will reach the large amount of public. So then the public must be able to think very independently, think very positively, and there should not be any fear or doubt in the minds of the investors. So independent research will add value because this recommendation is not from a party to the investment transaction. So therefore, independent research is a must, and it is timely. And especially in an IPO, most of the potential investors will come into the market looking at the attractiveness. Now, if the investment is viable, it is a contribution to the country even. If a person can say, yes, this is worthwhile and invest, it's a good thing. Otherwise, that investment will be a waste. So, waste of money, waste of resources. So, that is very, very important. And in most of other countries, as a regulator, I can see, this independent research are welcome, appreciate, and even they say we need exchange sponsored research. So that is actually independent research. Even in Sri Lanka, I personally believe, and the regulators in time to come must think about having this kind of exchange sponsored research. That means then the research firm is not a party to the investment proposal, investment transaction. The independent body will carry out the entire research, and based on that they will express their views. So that will be unbiased, not a marketing approach, and it will be a healthy input to the investor to make an informed decision in a very professional manner. So therefore, I think in Sri Lanka, due to these factors, so we should encourage and we should accept and we should be aware of the importance of independent investment research.
Absolutely, Professor. Yes, that was very, very clear, because the importance of the independent researchers as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, and being the pioneers in Sri Lanka, Investor I Private Limited, Mr. Chamikara Gunawardena is given a very good initiative towards that. And as you mentioned that you are looking forward in future with exchange sponsored research institutions to be established in Sri Lanka. That is a welcome move. And let me ask the final question from you indeed. That is, who is an independent research provider and what are the companies in Sri Lanka?
The answer we have already given. As he mentioned, according to his explanation to one of your questions, he said they are the pioneers. If they are the pioneers, there is no other previous such independent firms. And the only available thing is at the moment, they are firm. So I think with this, it's better to have more and more companies in time to come. Then there will be a competition again. Then this competition will come up with a very good input to the present setup. So that means, good research will come out. So I can see a good sign because in time to come there will be more research firms. That means you have to give the best. Shamikar can add value, add something.
Yes, thank Professor. He's forced this question to you, and in fact I put in a different way that question, like repeating that question, who is an independent research provider and what are the companies in Sri Lanka? And being the very first company in this category in Sri Lanka, I am sure that you have in your mind to spare with our listeners many things. So can we just elaborate on that?
Yes, Victor. Any research provider could claim that they are independent, but it all depends on how you define independence. So at present, as far as I know, there are a few research firms who are providing investment research to institutions. And the way we define independence is none of our employees, research analysts, cannot trade in shares. Because the moment your employees, especially the analysts, start trading in the stock market, they have created a vested interest in number of stocks. And also you are privy to sensitive information when you are working in this capital market as an analyst. If the employees, especially the analysts, are trading, they can exploit this advantage to their benefit at the expense of the clients and investors. So one principle that we are trying to inculcate, promote in our organization is that no research analyst can trade in any of the shares. And also they are not remunerated by the amount of deals, by the quantity of reports they produce. They are remunerated by the quality of the research reports they produce and the independence of those and how objective they are. And thirdly, we also define our independence by saying we do not use our investment research to support any other business. I mean, if you look at some organizations globally, they say they are independent, but they support their internal business transactions through this research, especially investment banks.
Well, Mr. Chamikar, let me just interrupt you because when you are repeatedly mentioning about the importance of independence research, that is very well understood. And as far as the stock investors are concerned, they might be coming, in various stock investors might be approaching you to get your research particulars. So in that case, how do you, I don't think that you are going to just do some differentiations on that. And differences on that. The same research material that what you have, you are going to just give whoever that need your research material.
Yeah, we have two types of research publication service. One is subscription research, other one is fee-based research. So subscription research is where anyone who has some interest in economy or investment could subscribe to our research service for a nominal fee, and they will get periodic research reports, at least one corporate research report a month, a comprehensive weekly report that is covering global and local economic and capital market situation. Plus, they will also get a valuation guide and any important updates on corporate sector and economy. That is the first and our flagship service is called subscription service. Other one is fee-based research where the institutions like could be stockbroking firms, could be foreign funds, local financial institution could commission us a research report, and we charge them a customized fee. We give them a customized research report, and also but that is again independent. We'll always keep maintain our independence.
That is, Mr. Chamikar, based on their request you are doing for them.
Yes, they need to request us.
It is not a general one.
No, that is not a general one.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chamikra Gunawardana, interesting question, I believe. What are the common myths about Sri Lanka's stock market?
Yes, Victor, as you just said, this is a very interesting topic to discuss about. There are a large number of myths that are being circulated in the country, in Sri Lanka's capital market. I will try to narrow it down to key 5 myths. Some of these myths are obviously fabrications, while others are half-truths. Yeah, but I need to point out that there are some people who try to speculate on certain shares. And they may look like gamblers to some, but in fact they are not gamblers, but simply speculators. When you talk about gambling and investing, we need to distinguish between what is investing, what is speculating, and what is gambling. An investor has a mid to long term time horizon, and also he has a reasonable expected rate of return in his mind with a given risk. Whereas a speculator is having a short term time horizon and is expecting exceeding amount of return. So that is the two main difference between speculators and investors. And in Sri Lanka, until the end of war, we had more speculators than investors due to the uncertainties that prevailed in the country. So I must clearly say that anyone who buys shares in Sri Lanka stock market or wherever, any investor who buys shares does not fall into category of the gambling community at all, because he or she has a claim on the assets and profit of shares, which does not become zero unless it is a bankrupt organization. And the second myth is the belief among investors Sri Lanka's stock market does not follow fundamentals. This is again a myth. And for me, it seems to me that this is a notion propagated by traders, people who trade in the market, who always look for short-term goals at the expense of gullible and unsuspecting investors. In the short term, there are speculators, as I said, who try to speculate on corporate sector and economic developments in the country to earn a quick return, which may lead to prices that may look unjustifiable. But in the long run, these prices tend to adjust to more realistic and fair levels. So we firmly believe, and I can categorically say, Sri Lankan stock market does follow fundamentals in the mid to long term. And the third myth is that if you want to make money in Sri Lanka stock market, there is a belief that one needs to trade. It is also a myth, and anyone who has experience in trading knows it is risky business. And since it is short-term oriented, whereas investing with the mid to long-term time horizon, anyone again with experience knows it is less risky, because you have the luxury of waiting for a long time and cover the market cyclicals, the economic uncertainties, and the time to adjust to the realistic price levels. And another myth that is going around in the stock market, the investment advisors cannot be trusted. And this is a strong misconception that all investment advisors have self-interest and they mislead investors to commission. This is completely wrong. It is not true. But certain investment advisors, I won't say mislead, but since their earnings are dependent on commissions, they want to generate more transactions. At the same time, I would say that there are no good or bad broking companies. All broking firms run their operations on commission generated through transactions. So as a prudent investor, what you need to look at is whether that broking company has a strong research team, and does your advisor's recommendations are based on research. And the final myth I want to point out is that investors can earn a fast income from share tips. Yes, share tips do work, but not all the time. May work 20% of the time, or may work 50% of the time. But as a novice, as a amateur investor, you should never base your investment decision on share tips.
Well, Mr. Chamikra Gunawardana, and my next question is, what
Vantage Point
program? What do we discuss in it?
The Vantage Point program was created to educate and help anyone with an interest in economy and investment, be it professionals, academics, businessmen, government workers, fresh graduates, students, housewives. The name of the program itself gives the meaning that if you listen to this program, you will come to a position where it could afford a broad overall perspective of the overall things in the market that is affecting your investment decisions. And there are a number of factors that affect the capital market, and we try to cover factors driving Sri Lanka's capital market, which includes the global economic situation, the global geopolitical situation, global performance of the global capital market, and also Sri Lanka's economic situation and Sri Lanka's capital market situation. Our view is that even if Sri Lanka's economy and listed corporates do well, if the global economy is gloomy and capital markets are underperforming, a sustainable rally or optimism in Sri Lanka's capital market can never be expected. Because Sri Lanka is not decoupled from the global economic system. We are integrated. So whatever happens globally do affect Sri Lankan economy and Sri Lankan capital market. Therefore, we try to provide our listeners a review of global economic, geopolitical, capital market situation as well as local economic sector and company performance. So when you say global economic and geopolitical situation, we look at mainly three geographies: US, European Union and China. If anyone follows the path we show in this fortnightly program that has been broadcast on Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, we believe the listeners or user of our research will be able to be updated about the global and local macro situation rather than being a frog in the well, and also they could maximize returns while minimizing the risk of investing. So therefore, as the pioneering independent investment research firm in Sri Lanka, I encourage all Sri Lankans not to miss this program on every other Saturday in Sinhala and every other Sunday in English.
And Mr. Chamikara Gunawardana, my next question is, who is Investor I and its emergence?
Yeah, I would briefly talk about Investor I. We launched this operation in February 2012. The reason why I wanted to start this venture, I saw for myself a number of shortcomings, weaknesses in Sri Lanka's capital market. I started my career as a research analyst in one of the broker firms and went on to head 2 research departments of 2 broker firms, another 2 broking firms. And I saw, despite 70% of Sri Lankans being Sinhala speaking, Sinhala reading community, there was no investment research published in Sinhala. Another reason was the research carried out by some broking firms tended to be biased. Even if some broker firms try to be objective in their research, I found those research reports were not shared among all clientele. Therefore, to overcome these fundamental issues in the capital market and meet any potential demand for independent research, I thought I should start my own standalone research firm.
Fine. By hearing you all, and we can understand the number of products that you have and the pure intentions of providing such a wonderful service. Let's move on to the next one. What is Investor I's role in helping investing public in optimizing return on savings and investment?
As Sri Lanka's first independent professional and bilingual investment research firm, we are trying our best to address an issue that has been plaguing the market till last year. That is the lack of investment knowledge and low capital market penetration. And these issues have given rise to other concerns such as exploitation by few manipulating investors, weakening local and foreign investor confidence, thereby affecting our country's economic development negatively. As I described earlier also, our subscription service is available to anyone with an interest in Sri Lanka's economy and investment. That will give you an up-to-date, analytical and insightful research reports. For all our research work, we use internally developed comprehensive research framework and methodology to ensure that all key criteria relevant to capital market investment has been looked into in depth. Of course, obviously, if you want to get some basic information about our organization, you can visit our website www.investori.info. We will soon have a brand new website with much more detailed information such as our research framework.
Well, that was an interesting session indeed.
Vantage Point.
Intelligent investing through research. Sri Lanka's first of its kind investing talk show that you have been listening for the first time. And of course, we had in our panel today Mr. Chamikara Gunawardana, who is the founder of Investor I Private Limited. We say a big thanks on behalf of our listeners and taking part especially on the very first program. Thank you very much, Mr. Chamikara.
Thank you, Victor.
And we wish you all the best in the coming years in your activities.
Thank you, sir.
And of course, we say a big thanks to Professor Harindra Disa Bandara, who is the Active Director General of SEC, for taking part and explaining all about his organization and the situation as far as this investment is concerned in Sri Lanka. Thank you, Professor, once again.
Thank you very much.
Well, you have been listening
Vantage Point.
an interesting program, and today we had two guests, Mr. Chamikara Gunawardana, founder Investor I Private Limited, and of course Professor Harendra Disa Bandara, Director General of SCC. And while we are thanking to both of our very first invitees, we are here to wind up the program today. My special thanks goes to Kalpagi at the controls and producer Indira Navagama. This is Victor Raj wishing you good morning.
Welcome to a brand new series, Vantage Point, first of its kind investment talk show in Sri Lanka.
Every other Sunday on Radio Sri Lanka from 10 to 11 a.m.
A review of global and local economic situation, capital markets and selected stocks.
Speakers, Securities Exchange Commission Acting Director General Professor Harendra Disa Bandara and Chamikara Gunawardana, founder Investor I Private Limited.
Sponsored by Investor I Private Limited. If you are looking for investing through research, don't miss your Vantage Point.
Every other Sunday on Radio Sri Lanka from 10 to 11 a.m.
Right here on Radio Sri Lanka.